Welcome to the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode number 152. Hi, everyone. I'm Jill. Thank you for joining us.
And I'm Chris. Jill and I are your hosts for this podcast and the founders of the Becoming Elli community.
In case you're wondering, we decided to name our community Becoming Elli because Elli was the Norse goddess of aging who beat Thor in a wrestling match. Chris and I thought, hey, we want to be like Elli.
You can find out more about the Becoming Elli community and this podcast at our website, becomingelli.com. Elli is spelled E-L-L-I.
Be sure to sign up for our newsletter while you're there. That way you'll know about new episodes and anything else that's new with us.
Today, we're talking with Maria Molvin about staying fit and strong. Let's go to the podcast.
Maria Molvin is a Becoming Elli member who, like many of us, is trying to find strategies to stay healthy and fit as she ages, balancing work, family obligations, focusing on healthy eating, prioritizing sleep, and finding time to be active can be challenging.
Maria lives in Northeast Ohio with her husband. She takes advantage of all the great local metro parks and the Cuyahoga Valley National Park to walk and hike. Welcome, Maria. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Yes, it's great to talk with you. And you and I have known each other for a long time.
Yes, I was thinking about it today. I think it's over 20 years.
Oh, I think it's even longer because when I went on LinkedIn, we first started working together in like 1998 and we knew each other before then. So
we did.
Yeah. So it's been quite a while. At any rate, it's we were so young, though I didn't really think of myself that way, but you know.
True.
Not that that has anything to do with it, but what do you do today to stay fit and strong?
Well, mostly I walk and hike, and I also try to lift weights and work out about usually 2 to 3 times a week, maybe 4 if I can fit it in. I do have just a home gym. When I recently remarried, we combined our equipment, so we're lucky enough to have an extra bedroom with an elliptical, treadmill, an exercise bike, and a weight bench and some weights. And I also like to use bands and I can kind of hook them around the equipment and use bands to work out. So it's nice to have a home setup. I work at home. So it's nice not to have to take the trip to a gym, although in the past I have belonged to a gym, but it just makes it so much easier when I walk by that gym and think, oh, I need to get a workout in.
So you have a treadmill, an elliptical?
Yeah, and an exercise bike.
And an exercise bike. Wow. Plus then the bench.
Yes.
And you are lucky to have an extra bedroom because that's a lot of equipment.
It is.
Do you have it all decked out with mirrors and everything too, and music?
Just one mirror, and then we do have an extra TV in there. And I like to listen to music when I work out. So
yeah, I do too.
Good. So all right, music, not books or podcasts or whatever.
Sometimes I will listen to podcasts, and of course, this podcast is one of them. But there are a couple other ones I like to listen to. It does make the time seem to go faster. Usually what I do first thing in the morning, take my shower and all of that. But I do get on either the elliptical or exercise bike for about 10 minutes before I get to work. And I just find that really wakes me up in the morning. I'm not much of a morning person, so I never thought I'd want to do any exercise in the morning. But as we've talked about, and I know it's other people have talked about it on the podcast, when COVID and the pandemic hit, things changed and I started working at home. And that's when I realized I liked having something in the morning. I used to have my walk into work, and when that went away, I thought, I'd like to get going a little bit in the morning. And I just do something real easy. I don't, get all sweaty and push it real hard, but it's nice to wake up that way.
It gets the blood circulating, doesn't it?
It does. It
gets
does.
your brain kind of filled with things. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that you lift weights 2 to 3 times a week. What do you do for strength training? Can you tell us specifically? Do you mind?
No. So one of the things that I realized I have is joint hypermobility. So I do have to sort of watch some of the movements that I do. But I think it was the last podcast with Kathy Murray where she was talking about functional movements. So I like to do squats, and I try to do the sitting up or sitting and standing on one foot, but I have to cheat a little bit with my heel. But still trying to do movements like that just kind of mimic some of the things you want to be doing. I realized that sitting all day at work, I did actually have a shoulder problem a couple of years ago. And part of it was because my shoulders had started rounding in as I was sitting working at the computer, or even standing working at the computer. And so that's where I use my band on my part of my elliptical, and I can do upright rows to kind of strengthen the upper back and just really concentrate on keeping my shoulders back so I don't have those issues anymore. And then typical things with dumbbells like bicep curls and skull crushers for the triceps and things like that.
Good, good. And what about cardio? Tell us a little bit about that.
I do try to get outside. You know, in Northeast Ohio, we have all of the seasons, but I'm an all-weather walker. My husband says, you know, there's no bad weather, just bad gear or bad clothing. So I make sure I have plenty of things when it's cold out and also warm out. In the evenings, a lot of times I'll do a half-hour walk around our neighborhood. And we live in a pretty hilly neighborhood, so it's a good workout. Plus, as I mentioned, within probably 5 minutes, there's 3 metro parks where I can go walk. And it depends on the weather. There's one with a paved path, which is nice when it's been raining or it's kind of mucky out. Or we have some places where we can actually do a little bit more hiking. We like to get outside and be outside.
That's cool.
What keeps you motivated to keep working out? Like what gets you to do that in the morning or to go do the bicep curls and the skull crushers? And
I think some of it is habit. I do think it's good to get into habits. I think I've heard some things about motivation and that it's not, you know, some people feel like it has to be willpower or something like that. I'm not sure I quite believe in willpower, but I think some of it is, like I said, getting into habits. And I've noticed lately, sometimes I really don't feel like working out or I don't feel like going for a walk. And I just have to remind myself that when I'm done, I will be happy and I will feel better. And sometimes when I'm really waning, my husband I'm lucky that he's very supportive and he'll say, you know, you'll feel better if you do a workout. You know, you feel better if you go out for a walk. Or it's nice to go out for a walk together. That's sort of our time after work to download our day and talk about things, which is nice.
Well, it's nice to have someone to help encourage you, I think, without being like, I mean, there's
nagging.
Yes, without nagging.
Yes.
That's an encouraging way to say it rather than, get off the couch, you.
Exactly.
You lazy slug of bed.
Well, you bring up a good point, habit and willpower and discipline. If I think of too much willpower, to me, it feels like punishment, not like a treat. And if I can find something fun to do, like talk with people when I'm walking, the time just goes flying by. It's so much different than when you force yourself to get out there and then trudge. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And the other thing that, I have sometimes my work is fairly stressful. And by the end of the day, I'm feeling a little mentally wrung out. And one of the things that I know a lot of people talk about is meditating. And I've tried it before and it's just never something that stuck with me. So I was looking up what are different forms of meditation. And one of them is a walking meditation.
Yeah.
And so especially if I'm by myself out walking or hiking, one of the things about walking meditation is you think about what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you smelling? And all of that. And if I'm really struggling to kind of forget about work or forgetting about whatever that's bothering me, I try to reorient myself to what am I seeing? What am I smelling? And how am I feeling and things like that. And it makes the time go by. And especially if you're out, maybe walking around the neighborhood, you're looking at the neighbor's house and, oh, if it's spring now, oh, look at there's flowers coming out and they're all different colors and just really taking in what's around you. And it does make the time go by and also relieve some stress. And usually by the end, I'm feeling much better.
Yeah, that's great.
Sort of like being mindful while you're walking.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I know working full time and family obligations, it does take a lot out of you. But do you ever say, I'm just going to veg out and do all my workout tomorrow? Do you ever do that?
I do. I mean, there are times when, I just really don't feel like it or something's going on. And I think you do have to give yourself a break. And I'm someone who likes to have goals and be busy. I'm usually a fairly high energy person. And sometimes I have to remind myself that rest is okay. It's okay to rest and it's a good idea to rest. And as I get older, I think I do need a little bit more rest and time to relax. And I think you do have to kind of cut yourself a break. I think I can, like a lot of women, be sort of hard on myself and think I always have to be doing something. And it's okay to read a book or watch some TV or just look out the window and watch all the wildlife we have in our yard or something like that and just relax.
Rest sort of helps your body recover, I think.
Yep. Rebuild those muscles after a hard workout.
Yes.
In our introduction, we said that one of the things you focus on is prioritizing sleep. And I just wonder, how do you do that? And have you been able to improve your sleep?
I have. So probably over 20 years ago, I was actually diagnosed with a sleep disorder and I can fall asleep fairly easily, but I wake up in the middle of the night. And it's almost similar to if you have sleep apnea or restless leg syndrome. I just come up out of like REM sleep and I might not even be aware of it. But at the end of the day, I would wake up and still not feel rested. So I do take a medication for that. But what I've noticed as I've gotten older, especially after I went through menopause, my sleep was starting to get worse. And so, I started looking at what can I do? So I read the one book, Why We Sleep, and that helped with some things. So making sure, the room is really dark and putting away my phone at least a half hour, if not an hour before I go to bed. I think some of the other things are, I was never very good at going to bed at the same time every night, especially on the weekends. I am more of a night owl, but I work a regular office type work day. So I do need to get up and, on the weekends, I would let myself stay up till midnight and things like that. But I do think, again, a supportive husband, he's good about going to bed at the same time every night. And once I started getting into that habit, it really, I could tell it made a difference. And even on the weekends, it's not like I'm a young 20-something going out to party in the weekends or anything. We were usually just watching a movie or watching TV. So trying to go to bed at the same time. The other thing is something that I think I heard on here was something called yoga and nidra. And I found some YouTube videos, one specific person, and they were about 10 to 15 minutes. So I've started using those sometimes, especially if I go to bed and, I have those racing thoughts and I realize I'm just not relaxing. I'm not able to fall asleep. I'll put on one of those YouTube. It's actually a video, but I'm just listening to it on my phone and it's more like a body scan. And I found that's really helpful. The other thing I did just recently add was taking CBD. I did some research and my husband did some research into things to help you sleep. And so I found a company that is like third party certified and has good quality CBD. And that seems to be helping me stay asleep.
Wow, that's great.
Is that like a gummy or?
They come in different forms. There's capsules and gummies. I tried both. I think I kind of like the gummies. They seem to be helping. I tried it like one or two nights and didn't think it was working. And then I did read, they said you need to do it multiple nights. And I do think it's helping.
It helps you go to sleep or helps the quality of your sleep?
I think it helps the quality of my sleep and make sure I stay asleep, because usually I can fall asleep, like I said, pretty easily. And if I'm struggling, the yoga nidra really does help relax me. And so then I fall asleep. But then sometimes I would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, and sometimes 4 or 5 in the morning, and just could not go back to sleep. And that makes for a very long day.
Yes, it does. It's like, oh, I might as well get up because I'm not sleeping. But then,
yes,
right, you have jet lag and you didn't even go anywhere.
4 hours later, when do I get to go back to bed?
Right.
Do you prefer working out in the morning? You said that you're more of a evening person, but do you work out now in the morning or later in the day?
I usually do later in the day. I usually do it right after I'm done working.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I feel like it kind of eases me into the rest of my evening. It does help with stress. Yeah, I usually, like I said, I do about 10 minutes in the morning, but that's just more to wake me up. I'm more of an afternoon workout person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always liked working out then. That to me is like a nice way to transition from work to eating your dinner and having your evening.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I'm more of a morning person. I find if I put it for the afternoon, something else always gets in the way, because the day's rolling, and it just, if I get it done first thing in the morning, nothing's in the way. You know what I mean? Has it changed when you use that time of day, does that help with your sleep?
I don't know. I never really thought about it. And I've usually been someone who worked out in the afternoons, so I'm not really sure if I would notice a difference.
Let's talk about yoga for a moment. I know you used to do a lot of yoga and you became a certified yoga instructor.
I did. I really liked yoga. I did. I went and did like a weekend where I became a yoga instructor. At the time, I was actually doing something else I haven't done in a while, which is I was taking dance classes, and I was actually for about 10 years I did belly dance. So I was going to teach yoga at the dance studio. It never quite took off, but one of the things that I mentioned that I have joint hypermobility, and I had started going to a gym and working with a trainer, and it was great. I really liked it. I was one of those people who used machines, and then I was a little intimidated, but the trainer got me to start using free weights and using some of the other, cable machines and things like that. And I really enjoyed it. But I did start noticing that the inside of my elbows were really bothering me. And I happened to have a doctor's appointment. I said something to my doctor, and she said, well, when you have problems on the inside of your elbow, it's called golfer's elbow. And I said, well, I had never golfed. But I looked up golfer's elbow and joint hypermobility and found this article that was very eye-opening. It was talking about, it was by a doctor, and it was talking about all of the things that can go into joint hypermobility. Mostly you just think of, oh, especially with me, my elbows go past 90. Or my knees, you'll notice, in the back kind of bow out a little bit. I found out one that if you're born with it, it's in all your joints, not just the ones you might notice. And one of the things that is actually not good for you is yoga. And I was really disappointed.
I bet.
I love doing yoga. And, I did have some problems with my lower back would always bother me. Sometimes my shoulders would bother me. And so my solution was do more yoga. And what I really found out is it's actually a connective tissue disorder. So my joints and ligaments are extra stretchy, and they're not really doing their job. They're not protecting my joints the way they should. And so the muscles that are around your joints end up taking the load and trying to keep your joints steady when you're doing any kind of movement. So I didn't want to accept that fact, but I finally thought, well, okay, let's see what happens if I stop doing yoga. So I stopped doing it for about 2 weeks and noticed my lower back problems went away and some of my other issues I had went away. So much to my chagrin, I ended up kind of giving up yoga. I do some light stretching after my workouts, but I mostly focus on strength and stability and balance and things like that versus the flexibility, because I pretty much naturally have that with the joint hypermobility. And I didn't realize that probably was overdoing it when I was doing different yoga poses because I could. And it actually wasn't helping.
That's why you probably liked it, because you were probably really good at yoga.
I was. And it made it enjoyable that I was pretty good at it.
You were a natural, right?
I was a natural, but I would say for most people, it's a good idea, but for me, it turned out not to be.
So basically it was requiring your muscles to try and do the job that your ligaments and tendons were supposed to be doing, which is holding the joint in place.
Yes.
You would have to have a lot of muscle to compensate for that.
And so I would go, I still do go every month for a massage because I would be my muscles would be so tight. And where it really affects me, and again, this was brought up in the article, I was reading through the article and thinking, oh, this is me. Well, this is me too. Because your shoulders have, let your arms move in so many different directions. I think it's your traps up by your shoulders and all of that. Yeah. Mine are always like hard as rocks because they're engaged all the time trying to keep my shoulders in place and steady. And so I find that I really have to, I have like a massage wand that I use every night before I go to bed. That's another thing that helps me relax, is just kind of try and loosen some of that up and loosen, some of my upper back muscles because they just get really tight. And so I use more, like I said, like massage and things like that to try and help with my muscles, tension that I get. So, and I have had, I've a couple times have had knee problems where I had knee pain and, ended up going to physical therapy, added some, movement. So when you mentioned working out, some of the things that I do is, they're side steps. I think people sometimes call them monster walks or whatever, with a band around my ankles. So I make sure that I'm working the outside of my legs and then do some exercises for the inside. So, walking, using the bike, the elliptical, it's all forward motion. So getting those sideways movements in to make sure that I'm strengthening all around my knee and all around my legs.
Yeah.
I can see where you would need to have, so strength training is probably really important for you.
Yes.
So go back to the motivation of why you keep doing it. That might be
right. And I can notice if I get a little, lazy and don't feel like working out, but I'm going for walks all the time. Sometimes I'll start to notice, I'll have little pains in my knees and I think, you need to get back to doing those, because they do make a difference.
Wow. But no doctor, when you first you first identified it yourself by reading the article.
Yeah. And I knew I sort of had it because, like I said, my elbows, if you can see, yes, they go out past 90. It doesn't look normal. Back when I was in 7th grade, that's how boys were teasing me. That's how I grossed them out and they would stop. But,
so people aren't going to be able to see what you just did, but if basically Maria put her arm out and instead of it being a straight line, it's
straight arm. Yes, the forearm
another
goes down
10
past,
degrees or so. Yeah.
Yeah. Where you would expect it to go. And there are some people who either do gymnastics or swimming and things like that. And sometimes they have like kind of exercise induced joint hypermobility, but I see my nieces and other people in my family have it. So I think it's an inherited thing with us. And the interesting thing was in the article, it talked about joint hypermobility syndrome. And what was interesting is I sort of had one of those aha moments. I mentioned that I had been diagnosed with a sleep disorder. And that was one of the things that was in there.
Really?
Yeah. Having IBS and acid reflux, both of which I have the joy of having. And also, again, another fun thing, varicose veins and spider veins. And it's has to do with this kind of elasticity that you have in your body, is what I've read. So there's some other things that go along with it.
Yeah. So flexibility is really not an issue.
No, it's not. It's not.
Sleep disorder. Wow, that's like your whole body system.
It is. And it was one of those moments when suddenly, again, I had been diagnosed with a sleep disorder, and then I started having digestive issues and went to a doctor and was diagnosed with IBS. And then later I noticed I had acid reflux. And so when I read an article that started putting them all together as connected, I thought, wow, it made so much more sense to me. Like, why do I have all these random things? And it turned out they were related.
Wow. Isn't that frustrating? I don't know. I just feel like when you go to the doctor, it'd be nice if someone could say, oh, you have this, so therefore be on the lookout for these things.
Right. I agree.
So you mentioned that you used to be a belly dancer, and you did that, you said, for 10 years?
Yes.
What was that like? And would you recommend that to people to try?
I do. It was really fun. It's funny. It's one of those things. I saw something in a local paper about it and thought, well, that sounds fun. When I was in college, I did some dance and I love to dance. I'm not necessarily the most athletic person in terms of having hand-eye coordination, but I always was pretty good at dance. So I thought, I think I'm going to try this. So it turned out that there were lots of people doing it. And it was one of those things you've never heard. I'd never really heard of people doing it. And then suddenly there were all these women who were in the classes. And I found out there were other classes, people holding classes, and they would get together and do something. They'd have a belly dance party. It's called a hafla, and learn choreographed dances, or people would do, like solos where they would dance to the music. And it was just really fun. The other really interesting thing about it is it's a little different than other types of dance in that you isolate a lot of movements on your body. And what it did was really help. It was a great workout because, to do some chest movements, you're actually using your upper back, and, to do different movements, you're using your legs or your hips and things like that. And I did find that it was really fascinating to isolate muscles and understand how to make the certain movements happen on your body to sort of mimic the music is what you do when you're dancing. And it's not easy. It took quite a while to even learn how to get marginally good at it. I just really enjoyed it. And then the other thing that was nice is I was going to classes. And so there was the community of being around other people, which I do admit I kind of miss that part of it, because I did it for a number of years for especially a large part of it was the same women, and we became really good friends. And in addition to dancing together, and it was really fun.
I know we talked to Lois Krebs on the podcast. Oh, I don't know. It's been a good while, but she did tap dance. And that was the one thing I remember she really liked, was that she made friends with all the other women who were in tap dancing classes with her.
Building a community is really fun.
It is. It is.
That's one of the things about working out at home that you sort of miss out on, I think.
I do. And I know now it's convenient to do it. It's definitely a habit that I'm in. And so I can regularly do it. But I have thought about that, one of the things I've been looking into, and I haven't had a chance to find a class near me, is Pilates. And I have thought about, it would be nice to go to a class where I would be around other people.
Could you do Pilates? Because it's very, I know everyone thinks that Pilates is similar to yoga, but they're very different. I mean, other than the focus on breath, but even that's different in Pilates.
And there's a mat usually involved. That's the only other thing I can
mat
think of.
And unless you do reformer, but yeah.
That's what I've looked into. I haven't, like I said, I haven't actually tried it yet, but it was something that was, I think even my chiropractor recommended that is something I could definitely do, because he was one that really said I said something about something bothering me, and he basically asked, how long are you stretching? And I told him, he said, for you, that's too long. For everybody else, that's a good amount of stretching. For you, that's too much.
So you've been a member of the Becoming Elli Facebook group for a while now. What do you find helpful about being a member?
I like that there's a community of women who are all focused on being fit. it's interesting. I think as we age, not everyone has that kind of mindset. So it's nice to find a group of women who are doing so many different things. I think it's just so fascinating. I know you've had a couple of them on the podcast also and doing so many different things. I think that's just so inspirational and encouraging that to see that. And also that people say the same things, that they're having a hard time getting motivated or they've had an injury and they have to come back from an injury. And that's not easy, trying to get back into their habits of doing things and seeing what they can do as they recover. So I just think it's very supportive and everybody's so encouraging.
Yeah, I would agree. You hit on all the highlights, I think.
We were just talking about community. So I think online community does serve as some community group for, if you're working out at home, you at least have something online to help connect with people.
I think so. And I know, with the two of you doing the veggie challenge and things like that. And it just helps remind me that healthy eating is important. And even listening to the podcast on a regular basis, just sort of that little reminder, like, this is important. I need to remember that this is important. It's really easy to kind of sometimes let yourself go and think, oh, well, I'll just eat this day and that's okay. And well, I eat this and that maybe wasn't the best choice for me, but just sort of that little reminder, no, healthy eating is important.
Yeah. Getting back on track.
Mentioning healthy eating, do you eat a particular way? Do you follow any certain way of eating?
So one thing that I do because of the IBS, I struggled with that for years and couldn't really figure out what was causing it. Sometimes I had figured out a couple of foods that were bothering me. Apples, which really crushed me around this area. We get in the fall some really wonderful varieties of apples. And so that was hard to take. And a couple other things I thought were bothering me. And then happened to go to a new doctor. I mentioned something to her and she said, have you heard of the FODMAPs diet? And I said, no, I have not. What in the world is that? So I got a book and started looking into it. And it has to do with the way sugars show up in actual food, like fruits and vegetables and grains and legumes and all of those things. And it kind of goes through the different types of sugars that show up in food. I'm sure there's another word for it, and FODMAPs actually is an acronym that stands for all those different types of sugars. But what they recommend is you do an elimination diet. At the time when I started reading the book, I think I was going on vacation pretty soon after that. And I thought, well, I'll wait till after vacation. But some of the things in the book, I thought, well, I could put that in motion and I could do that. And it turned out that it really started helping me. And I hope my sister doesn't mind. She sort of has the same thing, but it's funny. It's a very individualized thing, what bothers you and what doesn't. So one of the things that, a concession I had to make was I don't cook with onions. And I know a lot of people think, oh, how could you do without onions? But if you use other spices, there's lots of other things you can use. And I also watch the amount of garlic I can put in. I can tolerate some garlic. That doesn't bother me as much, but I just slowly learned some of the things that really would bother me. And now that I have it under control and I don't really have symptoms often at all, I can do things like in the fall, buy a couple of apples. And as long as I don't have them 2 days in a row, I can eat a couple of apples and things like that in it. And I've noticed I can start adding some of those things that were really bothering me back in. I think someone, I don't remember who it was, on one of the podcasts mentioned having a plant strong diet. I would say that's what I do. I do eat meat. One of the things that I did discover that bothered me were things like beans and lentils and things like that. So I just adjust recipes. So I have one black bean sweet potato chili. I just use less black beans, fewer black beans in there, but I amp up other vegetables. And so I add more veggies to it. And so I just have made those kinds of adjustments.
So you don't eliminate the black beans, you just reduce them.
Right. I don't eliminate some of the cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts are my favorite thing. I don't eliminate them. I just watch how many I have. and that I'm not eating them too often in like every meal or something like that. And then I'm fine. And so it's just sort of regulating. I knew I had discovered when I was in my 20s that I was lactose intolerant. And that also can be part of IBS. And so again, I just watch what I eat because I don't want to eliminate too many things, but I do eat meat. I try to eat, lean meats and then seafood and fish.
Did you go through a phase where you did not eat meat?
I did. I had mostly cut back to chicken and turkey and not eating it that often. And what did not realize, I knew I had the IBS. What I didn't realize is all of the things that you use when you're vegetarian or close to vegetarian for protein, like chickpeas and all of those good foods, they are good for you, were actually causing some of my issues.
The legumes and the beans, sure.
Yeah.
If you're eating a diet that's low in FODMAPs,
yes.
What kinds of foods fall under, you mentioned cruciferous vegetables.
Yes.
Beans. Would those be FODMAPs?
Yeah, they can be high in FODMAPs. Again, like anything in the onion group. I don't know what that's called, but onion and garlic and things like that.
Root vegetables, maybe?
No, they really aren't too. No.
Okay.
And so thankfully I love sweet potatoes. And, and potatoes and things like that. They don't seem to bother me. Carrots are good. Tomatoes, citrus vegetables are fine, or citrus fruits, I guess. I just said citrus vegetables, but citrus fruits, cucumbers, peppers, bell peppers, and things like that are all fine for me. Again, some of the fruits with pits in them are higher in FODMAPs, so peaches and plums and things like that. So again, I just kind of limit them. I don't want to completely eliminate them because I love fruits and vegetables. So it's just really watching the quantities.
Back to the apples for a minute. I was doing something where they were like, don't eat fruit, which I don't know why I was doing this, but I did it. But then you're right. We have wonderful apples here in the fall. And I remember thinking, what kind of diet tells you not to eat an apple? I mean,
exactly.
I went back to eating apples.
Yeah.
If it causes you if you know it causes you problem, then certainly limiting them is fine. But just doing it because someone says, oh, don't eat fruit.
Yeah. I have seen some things where they say, oh, in trying to eliminate sugar, they also include fruit. And I don't know where they're getting that from, but I don't personally think that would be a good idea.
I absolutely agree.
One of my favorite questions that we like to ask our guests is about their go-to meal when you've had a really busy day and, do you have a favorite meal that you like to prepare that you always have the ingredients on hand and put together pretty quickly?
I don't know if I do. I know every day at lunch, my go-to is, I've started doing a big salad. So I like that. We did get an air fryer. At first, we weren't really sure how to use it, but what I really found I like it for is, roasting some chicken breasts because I like to do some food prep at the beginning of the week. So, I can put like 3 chicken breasts in there and roast them and they come out really good. So I enjoy that. I am lucky that I am married to someone who not only likes to cook, but he's great on the grill. So I'm lucky that a lot of times during the week, because he's a teacher and he gets home earlier finishes work earlier than I do, he will make dinner. And so we will do grilled chicken or maybe some grilled shrimp, either grilling or roasting or steaming a vegetable. And those are kind of our go-tos when it's just easy to have something on hand. And we do try to make some extras so that maybe a little later in the week, we can just pull something out and warm it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that sounds good. I got an air fryer for Christmas too. So I'm still experimenting with some of my go-tos for that. It took me a little while to figure it out.
I love potatoes in my air fryer. I just think, potatoes are even like baked potato or roasted potato or cut it up into pieces and roast them. Yeah. I'm into my potatoes in the air fryer.
Yeah, I've been making shrimp with some Old Bay seasoning, and I really like that with it on my salad and things like that.
Salmon in the air fryer is also really good.
Yeah. Now, I will say I'm lucky in that he is very good at grilling salmon. It was actually the first thing he made for me, the first time he made food for me. And it was wonderful. And then he uses the grill, but he got this smoke tube. And so sometimes he'll smoke salmon and it's really wonderful.
Ah.
Yeah, that does sound good.
I guess one final question is if you had any advice to give a woman over 50 who's trying to be a bit healthier and stronger, what might it be?
I would say if you want to make changes, make them slowly. Like pick one thing that you want to change and get good at that. Whether it's cutting out something that you don't think is very healthy in your diet or adding more vegetables and incorporating that. And then once you get good at that, adding something else or starting small with, maybe you don't exercise as much or as much as you'd like to, just slowly increasing maybe how many times a week you go for a walk or how long you go for a walk and just slowly make changes. I don't know that making radical changes, unless there's a really good reason, I think sometimes that's where you kind of end up failing is if it's too big of a change. But as you slowly make changes over time, you can really make a difference.
That's good advice. So I assume if our listeners wanted to ask you anything, they could find you on Facebook. I know that anyone in the Becoming Elli Facebook group, the private Facebook group, can reach out to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you, Maria, so much for talking with us today. It's been great hearing your story, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Talk to you again. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
It was really good to talk with Maria. That hyperjoint condition is not something we've talked about before. It sounds kind of challenging.
Sure. I mean, as your body changes or just learning more about your body, everyone is an individual, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things that affect your systems.
Yeah. One thing that she said that got me inspired that I think I'm going to try, she said she does 10 minutes of workout when she first wakes up just to get the blood moving and things get more awake. And, I wouldn't even notice if I did a 10-minute workout because that's usually when I do the dishes, start the laundry, that kind of thing, because I don't notice.
So she said she gets on her elliptical or treadmill or whatever and just walks or moves for 10 minutes. That's a good idea.
Yeah, even if I just did the stairs in my house a couple times, going up and down doing the laundry, but be more intentional about it.
Yeah, that getting the day started with some action, with some movement is probably a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sure sounds like she has a great home gym set up with bike, elliptical, weights, and a bench. I have a few weights myself, but I don't take advantage of, I have a treadmill, but I don't hop on it the way I should. It's more of a coat carrier.
Yeah, I have a treadmill too, and I have avoided putting coats on it, but I don't jump on it as often as I could. That's for sure. I don't know. It's just, I mean, how more convenient could it be? It's not convenient. It's in a different room.
That's funny. Yeah, that's funny. I was happy to hear that she talked about the yoga nidra because I also find that that's real helpful when I've been asleep. I wake up in the middle of the night. I start thinking about either what happened the day before or what I still have to do the next day that I didn't get finished. And the yoga nidra helps me to fall asleep listening to those. Yeah.
You have something on YouTube that you use?
Yeah. I did a post actually on becomingelli.com about yoga nidra. And I did links to the different places so that if our listeners are looking for something, they can look there and click on those.
Okay. Good idea.
Yeah, it's helpful. But it's like a body scan kind of thing that just helps you organize, relax, and
maybe you can put a link to that in the show notes.
That's a great idea, Joe. I will. Thanks. And I'm curious about what our listeners are thinking. Let us know what you thought about today's episode and let us know how you're working out, keeping fit and strong, eating healthy. Let us know. Yeah.
And I guess you could let us know how you're doing with the Rainbow Challenge, because I can tell you that I feel like I'm not doing well with eating the rainbow. I don't know what I could be doing differently.
I do a lot of green with my lettuce. I find I go back to the same recipes that I really like. So got to focus on different colors, right?
Yeah. It's a challenge, isn't it? It's more of a challenge than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Eat the rainbow. Well, yeah, that's okay. That's hard. So leave us a message, whether it's about your fitness or food or the eating the rainbow. Leave us a message at becomingelli.com, or you can find us as Becoming Elli on Facebook, Instagram, X, Pinterest, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
It was great talking with you today, Jill. I'm looking forward to our next episode of the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast.
I am too. See you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.